Good morning, everybody. I haven't got my ribbons in yet, but I guess that's going to be coming pretty soon. This is Allan Onderchain. It's May 7th, 2020, and here in Locust Grove, Georgia. One of the things that plague me a lot when I'm on Facebook is when I see people praying all the time. And some people get really frustrated, however you want to word it, because their prayers aren't answered. You know, a lot of things begin in the heart and end up in the heart. If you're not starting in the heart when you're praying and asking God for help or forgiveness or His love. Let me tell you a little story to get it, you know, cranked up this morning. I'm going to split this up probably in several videos because there's a lot of information. And I remember about 10 or 12, 13, maybe 14 years ago when I was working for a Dodge dealership in North Atlanta. And we had started a senior ministry, and our church would, in the cold weather, would go downtown and pick up people obviously that weren't drinking or on drugs and bring them back to our church. And we set up in the gymnasium part of the church. We set up beds and all that, on the floor, and offered places to stay for the weekend when it was cold. And we'd feed them, and we even had somebody that came over and did haircuts, and they had showers to use. And most of all, we'd spend our time listening to them and witnessing to them. And it was a good thing for me because it got me into the nursing home ministry that I took over later on from the other gentleman that was retiring. And it was a wonderful ministry. And got to see a lot of people and all that, and see people that were in need of prayer because of where they were. But their prayers, I began to see uh, as they begin to understand that they have to believe in what they ask for, and it's not just to ask for it. This brings me to my story today. When I was working in this dealership, uh, we had an opportunity to take people from our church over to the nursing home. There's usually three or four uh, older ladies that went with us. And I had a pickup truck at that time, and you could get about two or three people in that. And then it was terrible to have to get elderly people to crawl in the back of the pickup truck, and put the tailgate down. So when I was working in the dealership, became a real problem. It bothered me, especially when it was raining and that I couldn't pick up the ladies, and we needed help every time we had a meeting with all the seniors in the conference room and brought a message to them. But I was at work, and I worked for a car dealership, and I went up to my boss one day and I said, I know my credit's not wonderful. It was pretty good, but I said I'd like to get a van, a minivan, because I think it's going to be very useful for me in the ministry and my wife. And he said, well, let me check on it. About, I guess, later in the afternoon, he came. He said, I can't really do anything for you right now. There's a deal that's going on sometime. Uh, I guess he said next month, and he said, I'll see what I can do. Maybe we can work out something. I said, well, that'd be wonderful. Well, that week went by and a year went by. Now, I still had faith because I was praying about it all the time for the Lord to help me in this ministry. It wasn't for me to profit. I'm not trying to profit by anything. And in your prayers, you have to be honest. You have to be straightforward with God. He knows what you're thinking. So don't think that you're going to pull over something on God. God's been around a long time. He knows man, and he knows our heart, and he knows who we are. But anyway, about a year went by, And I didn't give up. I just, you know, did my job at work, and a wholesale manager for the parts department, and I sold a lot of parts. And it was a pretty busy job. So anyway, I was there working on my wholesale accounts and calling them and all that. And then my boss walked in to the room, and he closed the door and he sat down. He said, "Well, I think we got something worked out here." I said, "You're serious?" He said, "Yeah." And I said, "I've been praying about this for about a year." And he just smiled, and he said, "Do me a favor if you would, call your wife and tell her to come on down here, and she can pick out the color and so forth, what she wants in the minivan." And I was so excited about that. Now, this gives you an example. I've had other prayers last a long time before they came true. But everything is in God's will. Now, I got two sets of notes that I have compiled over the years. When I was a pastor, I had this set of all kinds of information on here, sermon on and unanswered prayer, and it, it's so hard to explain to people unless they're very serious. You have to be serious with God. It can't be just something that I'm going to, use them, or just something at the moment that I'm trying to make other people look good. That's what happens when you get on Facebook, and you get on there and you pray for people. Pray from my heart. And most of them that I know that are on there do the same thing. They pray from their heart. God knows your heart. Now, unanswered prayers. Let me read this because this might help out a lot for some people. Throughout your Christian walk of faith, you learned a lot about unanswered prayers. In your life, you personally remember God using unanswered prayers to make you more like like Christ, and to build spiritual growth. Some prayers God answered in the last minute to build my faith and trust in Him. Most of the time, it does take a while. Depends on the situation, and this is hard to say something, but you have to be very serious. And another word, truthful, when you're praying to God. He knows your heart, He knows your mind, He knows what you're doing. Sometimes we get discouraged, become, become discouraged because He doesn't answer right away. But continually knocking on His door, God knows what is best. Never lose hope, and always seek God's will and not your own. That's a key. God's will that counts in this, not yours. He knows and He hears your heart. One thing I used to tell people all the time, some folks said, pray and pray and pray and pray about the same thing over and over and over every day. It's like, and then they'll say, well, God's not hearing me. And sometimes I just want to give up. I never give up. God hears every one of your prayers, but you have to be absolutely sincere about them. Uh, Time goes by so quickly, and realize God's time is in a year, might be a twinkle of an eye. You don't know. But He hears your prayers, and He hears you knocking at the door. And one of the scriptures said that, if you knock at the door, He'll answer. And He always answers. It may not be in your time, but it's in God's will when that happens. Uh, but when you seek God's will, don't think because you keep praying the same thing over and over again that He didn't hear you and you're trying to refresh His memory. Now, He talks to millions of people every day, every year, and He knows exactly, never forgets. Now, one of the reasons why you have a problem having your seemingly you have your prayer not answered, not God's will. That's one of the answers. We must always seek God's will. Listen to this part. This is real important. It's all about Him and the advancement of His kingdom, not yours. Always important to remember when you pray to God, you're having to fulfill His program, whatever He's trying to accomplish. Now, look at a verse here, 1 John 5, 14, 15. I'm just going to read a little synopsis of what that means. This is the confidence that we have in approaching God, that if we ask everything and anything in His name, according to His will, He hears us. He hears us. And if we know that He hears us, whatever we ask, we know that we have what we ask from Him. He knows, He hears. Matthew 6:33, this is synopsis of that verse 2. But seek ye first the kingdom and His righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. So there's a lot of things that you have to do in your sincerity. You have to be sincere in what you're asking and what you're doing. And God understands and He hears you. Okay, the second thing is we know that God answers prayers, is it wrongful motives and ungodly prayers. We look at James 4:3, synopsis of that. When you ask, you do not receive because you ask for the wrong motives. If you're just out there trying to profit by prayer and using that as a prop or something, the Lord will not answer that prayer. Proverbs 16:2, the synopsis. All a person's ways seem pure to them, but motives are weighed by the Lord. God sees everything different than you do sometimes because you try to hide something or you try to mask it. If you see people on Facebook praying all the time, and I do myself, and we have to be very sincere, as we've talked about a few minutes, and we have to realize that God is going to answer prayers, but not in our time. Sometimes you get it right away, though. I've seen it happen. And let's see, Proverbs 21:2. A person may think their own ways are right, but the Lord weighs in the heart. Now, the third one is unconfessed sin. You know, if you're just going to commit sin, do things wrong, and just move on like it didn't happen and God's going to forget it, you have to have the right motives. You always have to have the right motives in that situation. It's so important to have the right motives because God will know and He'll find out. He'll show it to you because He won't answer you. So wrong motives and ungodly prayers. Look at about that one. When you ask, you do not receive because you ask for the wrong motives. It's got to be a pure heart when you ask God for something, and He knows your heart when you do it. And Proverbs 16:2 in synopsis, all a person's ways seem pure to them, but motives are weighed in by the Lord. Proverbs 21:2, a person may think their own ways are right, but the Lord weighs the heart. He always weighs the heart. And then the third one was unconfessed sin. And Psalm 66:18 synopsis, if I had cherished sin in my heart, the Lord will not have listened. Cherished meaning what you think is okay is not with God. You have to look at it from God's end. God is pure, 100% pure. We are not that way. And then Isaiah 59:2 synopsis, but your iniquities have made a separation. Listen to this one. But your iniquities have made a separation between you and your God. Hang on. Well prepared. Your sin has hidden His face from you so that He does not hear you. It's just like sometimes at work when you were talking to somebody and you could see what they were telling you was not true, and you just sit there and listen to it, and you go on your way. You don't do anything to accommodate that situation because you know they're telling you a story. The fourth thing that holds you back from your prayer being answered, living, listen to this one, living a continuous life of sin. You know, we all sin daily, not in our hearts, in our mouth, our eyes, or whatever. We sin. We always sin. And when we don't work at trying to change ourselves, I know sometimes saying nasty words it comes easy when you get mad or upset. And you need to ask God for forgiveness for that. And especially if you're somebody in the community and people see you. Like when I go on Facebook, there's some things I wouldn't say on there or some things I wouldn't do on there. Uh, I have a habit of doing some of that, and it's not good. So you have to think about that's kind of, we go back to the what would Jesus do? And that's what it is with God. What would God do? What would God say in this situation? And if you're living a continuous life of sin, Proverbs 28:9 synopsis, if anyone turns a deaf ear to my instruction, even their prayers are detestable. I went back in and read these verses and I looked at them, and they're pretty serious stuff. And that's the way we need to. Our prayers are very serious. And if you want God to answer them, you need to be serious in each and everything you do and how you handle yourself. Uh, in John 9:31, we know that God does not listen up to sinners. He listens to the godly person who does his will. I went back in there and verified that and looked at it, and it's true. He does what he knows you are. You've got to keep your eyes open and your head clear. We're going to look at one more verse here, and then I'm going to sign off because there's way too much information here. But hopefully all of this will help you as we go along to understand and how to get your prayers answered. Just always bear in mind that God's time of answering it and yours are totally different. Sometimes He'll ignore it because of your attitude as far as how you really are and what kind of sins that you do, and he likes to honor the sinless people. 1 Peter 3:12, the eyes of the Lord watch over those who do right, and his ears are open to their prayers, but the Lord turns his face against those who do evil. Now, you might sound real nice on Facebook, and you might sound really nice when you're going to church, but you got to be that way in real life. God knows who you are. He understands everything you are about. So you need to be honest in everything that you do and say. Now, back many moons ago, I'm just going to finish up here in the next minute. Sermon on unanswered prayer. When I wrote this, I read this. This has been many many years ago. Think about this for just one moment. You have this day prayed very strongly, but it seems to be of no avail. That happens to a lot of people, but they give up after a while. And you have to trust in the Lord in His time frame, not yours. And it's for His kingdom that benefits from, not from yours. Your voice to God seems to you like it's a whisper in a room full of thousands of people. I know people have felt that way. Or you just might be getting frustrated as a person in a room trapped with because of their no exits. Been there, done that. I want you to take care of, and I'll try to get another section on this in the next day or so. I am still working on the Revelation study, and I'm working on it hard. You have a blessed day, and remember some of these things we talked about. Go back and watch this video. And I'm not the best deliverer because of I've been so much out of hand, not being in a pulpit or not speaking anywhere hardly ever. And you have a blessed day, and take care. Thank you.